Hello and welcome to the show. This week's FailRace versus the community was muscle cars versus tuner cars. Now, if you are the sort of person who is going to get very annoyed at the results of this, or is going to be angry because this isn't technically a muscle car or this technically isn't a tuner car, then please go away. I really don't care. This was done for a little bit of fun, to bring some interesting cars, some cars that wouldn't normally race against each other, and a few people have suggested it would like to have seen it done. So we did it. I was always a bit dubious about doing this, but it actually turned out pretty well. So yeah, just sort of a little bit of a warning there. Second, I want to take this time to say that I've been racing with a wired controller for, I don't know, 10 months or something. Racing with the same one. It packed up just like 2 hours before we went to do this race session. The wire, the actual sort of like the connector, the wire, that's gone in it. So if I hold it still, perfectly still, it just about works. But that's not really very suitable for racing because if you move slightly your controller disconnects, and that's terrible and leads to a very big crash. So at the last minute I had to swap to a backup controller. Now I only have I have two backup controllers. One of them, the left trigger, the brake trigger, is insanely sensitive, so you can't use that because you touch the brakes, everything locks up. Doesn't really work. The other one I have is from when I first got an Xbox 360. Yes, it's that old. I don't know how old it is. I got my Xbox 360 within the same year that they were launched, so it's however long that is. It's really old. I stopped using it because the steering stick wasn't particularly sort of sensitive anymore. It was a bit rubbish. I knew that would be a problem. But I was going to have to live with it because it's better than nothing. However, what I didn't realise is that the brake trigger would jam. On the third race, you'll see at the start, I basically go into the first corner, I go to sort of put on the brakes, the trigger jams, I then manically bash the trigger until it works again. By that time, it's too late, and I do get it working eventually, but I cause a big crash. So I apologise for that. Also, just give a little bit of warning in the next few videos. I might not be driving very well because I have a terribly old controller. Anyway, back to the racing. At this point, things are working just about for my Corvette Stingray, and as we come up to the first corner at Road Atlanta, amazingly, I mean, you see a few cars went off a little bit wide, but amazingly everybody got through there relatively cleanly. I don't think there was much contact. Now I tried to be as fair as I could with the tracks, as there's Dodge Dart going very sideways in the cone. Hello cone. I tried to be as fair as I could with the tracks. I picked one track, Road Atlanta, that would be good for straight line speed. The next track, which is Twin Ring Montague East, I think that's the right version of it. Is it? I can't remember. It's the longer of the two shortened versions. Yes, because that makes perfect sense. That would be a sort of neutral track between straight line speed and handling. And finally, it was Tsukuba, which should be good for handling cars. Now, you would normally assume, shall we say, that the muscle cars would be the fastest in a straight line. The tuner cars would be better through the corners. However, this is Forza, and that really depends on how you built your cars. For example, the Civic that is in front of me is incredibly good. Those 90, I think it's a 97 Civic, they are phenomenally fast if they are well tuned, and that one is well tuned, and it was gone. I very quickly realised there was no hope of me catching it, so I was kind of, I wouldn't say stuck, but I knew I was resigned to second at the best. And you can see I was under quite a lot of pressure from an MR2. There we go. That was faster than me in a straight line. I'm in a Stingray. That shouldn't work, but it did. Although my car is very, very good through the corners. Although everything went wrong very early on as I clipped the final curb too hard. And I managed to roll it. Unfortunately, the camera doesn't show it very well, but I clattered the wall pretty heavily. I damaged everything in my car. Near enough every single part was damaged, except the engine, amazingly. Don't know how it got away with that, but everything else was damaged. Steering, drivetrain, aero, the lot, which made my car very slow and very difficult to drive. I think I was doing like 3 seconds a lap. Anyway, back towards the front, and another interesting little battle was developing, this time between a Nissan Fairlady Z and a Corvette C4. I will point out we allowed the Corvettes and the Vipers to run. You could say they are more sports cars than muscle cars, but I don't really care. In England, you would see them more as a muscle car as I get passed by a Cobra. The Corvette C4 is actually a very fast car. If tuned properly, admittedly not the most exciting of all of them, although its straight line speed certainly was lacking when you compared to this Nissan Fairlady. That thing was blooming fast in a straight line. It was very weird. There was very weird mixtures of of straight line speed in the cars. Like I said, that Civic is probably one of the fastest cars here. Yeah, it's an odd mixture, and certainly not what I expected to see. As you can see, the Corvette is now sort of catching up to the Fairlady Z. Now, you might have just caught at the end of that clip, there was an MR2 on its roof, and this is how it's happened. I wondered how he ended up on his roof there. It's a very unusual place to get stuck. Yeah, you just lose control, run over the curb a little bit too much, and the car kind of spins out on you, and then you're going sideways on the grass, which is a very bad thing. and he ended up under the bridge. It's an odd place. I've never seen a car end up on its roof there, but never mind. Further through the field, there's actually a fair few battles. This wasn't the most sort of action-packed race that we've ever done. This is an interesting matchup between a Subaru Impreza and a Chevrolet Chevelle. Chevelle's taking a little bit of a shortcut there. Still the Subaru manages to find a way past. I was actually very pleased with the variety of cars there were here. There was loads and loads of different cars. It wasn't just filled with Skylines and Supra. In fact, I don't even think there was a Supra at all. It wasn't just filled up with all the same sort of tuner cars and all the same muscle cars. There was huge amounts of variety, which is always good. I was a little bit concerned when I looked through the sign-up thread. There were loads of Imprezas. People had signed up with them, but not too many of them actually turned up, or they changed their cars at the last minute. So yeah, there was a really good variety of cars. It was interesting with the overtaking, especially if you're trying to overtake the muscle cars, because they have the straight line speed, or in most cases they had the straight line speed advantage. This Subaru managed to get far enough away, so not to worry about it. But yeah, overtaking the muscle cars was pretty tricky in some cases, because they did have a fairly big straight line speed advantage, although that did depend on how you could build them. This is a little bit further into the race, and the field did become really quite spread out. About halfway through, there was nobody really close to anybody else. I was dropping through the field, as you would expect, and everybody was just passing me in a straight line. This was the best kind of race for the latter half, really, between a Cobra and a Corvette C4. Now, amazingly, that Cobra had started 15th and last. We only had 15 in this race because we were having trouble getting people connected. Yeah, I apologise to anybody who couldn't get in because of connection issues. It's a nightmare, and I don't know how to fix it. Anyway, yeah, very good job from this Cobra to manage to make his way all through the grid, avoid all of the chaos. I don't know if he had any damage or not. I would presume not very much, as he goes and puts a move on the Corvette. Surprised the Corvette didn't defend any heavier than that. I think he might have been trying to get sort of a cutback going there, but it didn't quite work. As they come onto the back straight, you would imagine that the Cobra would pull away. That was what I was expecting to see, but it didn't really sort of have a particularly big straight line speed advantage. Now, I love the Cobra. I was tempted to use one. I didn't particularly want to build one because they start off in A class. I wanted to have access to more parts, more upgrades, but that Cobra really was flying. It's yeah, it was a very quick car. The Corvette tried to stay with it, but it was rather difficult for it. So at the front, the Civic just hadn't been really challenged the entire race. He got away. I think he started on pole or started on the front row. Either way, he got a good start, managed to keep out of trouble, though he did run a little bit wide through there, and pretty much vanished at the front. Yeah, those Civics, if they are well tuned, if you know what you're doing with them, they are incredibly fast. I don't think they're quite leaderboard cars here, but I know they can be on certain tracks anyway. So, unsurprisingly, or surprisingly, depending on how you look at it, Civic has managed to take the lead. The closest finish with the rest of the field between second and third with the Cobra and the Corvette. Interestingly, the Cobra had the fastest lap of the race, fractionally, from the Civic. It would have been interesting to see if them two had started alongside each other on the grid, how things would have gone, because I think there would have been a very close race between them. But never mind. Up next, we go to the Twin Ring. That's a really hard name to say. Thank you for naming your track that. I started in the mid-pack in this one. My Corvette had a very good start. It's a very fast starting car, though not as fast as the Mercury Cougar thing behind me. That was quite scary. Coming into the first corner here, always a little bit tricky. Very long straight, followed by a fairly tight corner. However, we all got through fairly unscathed. There's a little bit of grass cutting going on, and a little bit of pushing and shoving. I think the RX-7, oh, there's an NSX off in the background as well. Again, it's going to be close when 16 cars all pile into the first corner. There was a little bit of trading paint, but nothing major again, which I like to see. I'm now going for a bit of an overtake using the straight line speed advantage of my Corvette. The Mercury behind me is also going to kind of have a look. The NSX, though, of course, is much better through the corners. And while my Stingray isn't bad, the NSX manages to go right the way around the outside. Although I now am on the inside for the next corner, which is always useful, and can just about manage to get the pass done. And of course, can use a little bit of that straight line speed advantage as we come up to the next corner. The start of this race is very chaotic through here. There's a Mercury going really very sideways behind me, and they're going three wide all over the place. It was a very busy start for anybody in the middle of the pack. There's a Silvia that ran a little bit wide, ended up on the dirt, lost a few places. He went on his own accord, wasn't pushed. And we come up towards the final corner now. Still, it's very busy in the middle of the field. Me and the NSX were trying to get away from it. I think there's a Civic on the dirt. God knows what's going on. There's an MX-5 as well that's smoking. I think that's the only car that took any major damage in this race. There's an MX-5 Superlight somewhere in there that was smoking quite heavily. And then you can breathe for the first time as I had a little bit of space behind me to the NSX. It was a pretty manic start, that one. Further back, there was all sorts of interesting cars in this one. We've got a Chevelle with a huge bonnet scoop. It's pretty damn fast in a straight line, although it wasn't as fast as the Holden that was behind it. That Holden is incredibly quick. In front, there's a Barracuda and a Mercury having a little bit of an argument, and there's much dust and smoke and everything being kicked up through this section. Muscle cars don't like it through there, but it's not really surprising. Everything goes a little bit chaos through here. I don't know how everybody got through there. I don't know. Nobody had a crash, I don't think, through that section, and everybody was all over the place. Our Chevelle has managed to find himself now down in last place. Yeah, that on the opening laps through that sort of section, it's just chaos, because the tuner cars want to go flat out through it, or some of them do anyway. Some of them have got more power upgrades. Yeah, it is really a very, very busy busy opening couple of laps. And still, you know, the field hadn't spread out a huge amount. At Road Atlanta, there was a pretty big difference between, I'd say between lap times, but the field was really quite spread out early on. Here, it wasn't quite the case. At the front, it was a little bit more spaced out. This is sort of mid, I think this is around 10th place. They were all pretty damn close together. That Holden is still ridiculously fast as a straight line. It's a Barracuda trying to find its way past a broken MX-5. Yeah, well done for the MX-5 holding off for that long. I don't quite know how much engine damage it had, but if it's smoking, that's a fair amount. This is the problem you had with the better handling cars, is that the muscle cars, or I should say the cars that were faster in a straight line, because they weren't necessarily just reserved for the muscle cars, it was very hard to overtake. Most of your overtaking will be done in the braking zones. Very rare that you can go around the outside of somebody. So yeah, the muscle cars were incredibly hard to overtake, because the MX-5 has a bit of a spin. I think he might have been assisted in that one. Yeah, muscle cars were hard to overtake because they had the straight line speed. They could get away before you got to the braking zones, making it very hard for you to manage to outbrake them. This is back towards the front, and I was actually making progress this time. I hadn't ended up upside down at the first corner, which is always useful. It's very tricky to roll here. There's one nasty curve. Now, amazingly, I don't know how we got away with this. We managed to go too wide through this sort of section. Thank you to the driver of the Mustang for giving me enough space. It's very, very tough. You don't normally overtake through there unless you both know exactly what you're doing. And we both got away with it, which is always good. The NSX is going to follow fairly shortly afterwards. I ignore kind of massive lockups like that, because if he's got his car stopped and turned, it won't have locked up like that. That's just a laggy replay. Also ignore the sometimes dodgy gear shifts. Most people in here know how to change gear. The replays just go funny. If you change gear really quickly, like you can with manual and clutch, sometimes the replay just doesn't register you having pressed the clutch for long enough, so it sounds like you didn't, but you actually did. Yeah, I think that's what it does anyway. It's really hard to tell. Anyway, what was going on? I got distracted. Holden managed to overtake two cars in the corner. Not quite sure how that worked. I think they all managed to outbrake themselves. Yeah, this Holden was incredibly fast in a straight line. I'm glad to see somebody in a Holden. I like Holdens. So yeah, I don't know how he managed to get away with that one, but well done. You don't expect a Holden to be going past an NSX. I think it was a broken Mazda, to be fair to him, but yeah, that was a pretty interesting overtake. So well done on that one. What's going on? Me, I'm driving terribly. Yeah, I managed to hold the NSX off for, I think it's about 4 or 5 laps, when I got it all wrong and managed to dump my car onto the grass. I will say muscle cars were hard to overtake unless the driver made a mistake. And with the muscle cars, you were more likely to make a mistake. Or I keep saying muscle cars. There were some tuner cars that were set up to be fast. But yeah, if you made a mistake, it was very, very tricky to sort of come back. I know that I wasn't as quick as that NSX. The only reason I was staying in front of him was because I could defend in the corners, because I had the straight line speed, so I could sort of make that advantage up. I knew I had to get past him at the end of this straight, otherwise he was gone. I had the speed advantage, however, I hadn't had a particularly good run out of the final couple of corners, and I thought about it, I tried, I had a look, but I was just too far back, and there was nothing I could do about it. And then now I'm in trouble. I'm not going to be able to find my way back past that thing because it just handles too well. Further back, there was still some good racing going on as we come towards the end. It was a lot better in this race, I think, than the first one. Or at least there was a lot more close action on track. A few cars suffered damage. Again, nothing major, with the exception of the MX-5 with a smoky engine. I think everybody else got away with just kind of minor damage. And this is going to pretty much demonstrate the difficulty it is in passing the car that is faster than you in a straight line. The Civic here is actually not that bad. It's not that slow in a straight line, although of course the Barracuda is pretty fast. And it's just that bit faster to be able to pull away every time you get on straight. Through the corners though, the Civic is far, far superior, and I actually wonder how high up the order that Civic would be if it had been in clean air, because it got a really impressive lap time, despite the fact every time I looked at it, it was in traffic. So yeah, that Civic is probably a very fast car. But you see, here's the problem. The Civic is quick through these corners, it just can't go anywhere, because there's a great big muscle car in front of it. Now, even with a good run out of the corner onto the straight, it can't do much about it. It hasn't got the straight line speed, and the Barracuda is going to just about hold the position. If he defends through here, the Civic's trying to go around the outside. It's quite tricky through there, even though he has more grip. He can't quite get it done, and again, Barracuda is now on the inside for the next corner. You're unlikely to go around the outside of that thing, especially with a half decent tuned Barracuda. That one there seems to be a little bit of a slide, but now he's on the inside again for the next corner. Civic's going to have to go a very long way around if he's going to do that. He's now on the inside. I don't quite know how he... The Barracuda did very well to manage to hold that. I don't know how the Barracuda got away with that. And now the Civic's in real trouble, because it's just sort of two kind of straights to the finish line. I'm pretty sure this was the final lap for these guys. And now the Civic's run out of options. Unless the Barracuda goes wide, outbrakes himself, or gets too much wheel spin, slides out the final corner, not really going to have a chance, because the muscle car has the straight line speed. It's very hard to overtake a car that's quicker than you in a straight line, even if you have much, much superior grip. Anyway, while all of that was going on, it was another Barracuda that had led pretty much the entire race. I think he'd led it from the off. It wasn't a particularly comfortable victory. Behind him, the MR2 is now messing about, I think. But the MR2 had kept him fairly honest, just wasn't quite quick enough. Couldn't quite catch up to the back of him. This Barracuda was very, very quick. Didn't quite have the fastest lap time though. It was slightly beaten by the NSX. Having eventually been freed from me, he went and set a fractionally faster lap time. So yeah. We move on to race number 3 now. This is at Tsukuba. This was designed to give the tuner cars, or the handling cars I should say, a little bit more of a chance. There's a very sideways Nissan in there. Then there's a really big crash going on behind everybody. I think there's like 3 cars facing the wrong way. I was completely broken and out of it. But at the front, things were much cleaner. Well, a little bit cleaner. There was a lot of pushing and shoving going on in this lead trio on the first lap as an Evo 10 ends up out on the dirt. Yeah, the Evo's turned up for the first time in this race. I think there is a Skyline. I think this is the first Skyline we've had. I'm not sure, there might have been an R33 somewhere else, but I don't remember seeing it in this video. I don't think there was. I think this is the first Skyline. An Evo 10 now breaks himself and plows into everybody. Not particularly clever there. And end up kind of finding himself in the lead briefly. Yeah, interesting choice of cars we're going on in this race. There's a 317 and 350Z, I think. Evo 6 get a little bit of payback. I like the Evo 6s. They're nice cars. Probably my favourite of the Evos, so I'm glad to see that in there. Some more contact. Yeah, this wasn't the cleanest of races at the front, although I'm no one to talk really. Evo 6 is trying a little bit of a cutback there, and with a little bit of pushing and shoving going on, might just about get it done. Tsukuba is a fairly tricky track to overtake on. It's not a particularly long track, there's not many huge braking zones, so yeah, it's not an easy place to overtake. And as you can see, these 3 were still close at the end of the first lap. Further back, this was the car that I killed quite a lot of cars in the first corner mess. I know the car that we're looking at now has just gone slightly wide. I know I nailed the side of him. There is another Dodge Dart that I spun around in front of. There was an Infinity something that got broken. I think there was a El Camino as well. Can't remember everything that was involved, but there were quite a few broken cars. I love the suspension on this one. Yeah, there may have been a fair bit of brokenness. Yeah, so I apologise for that. It's just one of those things. It happens, unfortunately. So yeah, at the back things were pretty spread out, and there were a fair amount of smoky cars going on through there. Back towards the front, and the Evo 6 had managed to find his way into the lead, and now a Skyline was trying to make his way past the other Evo. These 3 were quite a lot quicker than everybody else at this stage. They'd managed to avoid the kind of chaos at the start, and they were kind of battling with each other, but they were all fairly fast, so they were managing to pull away from a large group behind them. You can just about see it in shot now. Yeah, there was these 3 at the front were pretty close, then the 4 behind them were also pretty close. The Skyline had been looking for a way past for a number of laps, Eventually managed to find a way past that tyre wall. A very good overtaking manoeuvre. Have everything all undone as they come in towards the hairpin. A bit of an ill-advised dive bomb from the Evo 10 there, and then they both kind of have a bit of a shunt. And then they're both damaged. No major damage. I don't think any of them had any major components other than aero damage. Aero damage does make a pretty big difference. You might not think it on cars that aren't necessarily running huge amounts of downforce anyway, but aero difference will make 3 seconds a lap difference on a fairly long track. It really does add up. You will notice it. Anyway, this was the big group behind them. A Dodge Dart. Amazingly, this Dodge Dart was pretty heavily damaged. It didn't have engine damage, but a lot of other bits were broken. I love how close the exhausts are to the floor. Jesus, that thing would they would scrape a little bit. Anyway, he managed to get punted off into the wall by one of the Nissans. It was a little bit chaotic back here, but it gets back on track. I'm not sure if he was let past or if the other guy, if the Nissan was having problems of his own. That Dart was very, very quick. And again, I wonder if it hadn't been caught up in all of the mess at the start and wasn't damaged. I wonder what it could have done. It was one of the unusual cars unusual muscle cars I should say, wasn't particularly quick in a straight line. I mean, it wasn't that sluggish, but it wasn't amazingly fast in a straight line, but it was really good handling. You'll see here, as they come onto the back straight, this group led by a 350Z, the Nissan's gone. The Dart and the Mitsubishi FTO have absolutely no answer to the Nissan. Between these two, it was pretty much even in the straight line. The Dart had a fraction of an advantage, but not massive. The 350Z was just gone. So yeah, a little bit of bucking the trend here with the Dart. He's going to have a look up the inside into the first corner. The Dart looks pretty good to drive. As you can see, he's got past the Mitsubishi, and then he's going to chase after the Nissan. So yeah, there were a few sort of exceptions to the rule of muscle cars fast in a straight line, tuner cars good through the corners. This is a few laps on. Again, there wasn't much going on for the rest of the field. As I said, at the back there were lots of broken things all over the place, and at the front the Skyline was pretty much pestering the Evo 10 the entire time. The Dart managed to make a move into the first corner. Now comes the kind of tricky thing around this track. If you've got the fastest car in a straight line, if you can stay close enough to the guy in front, you can probably get him on the back straight. It's not a very long straight here. I mean, okay, the whole track isn't particularly long, but if you can stay close enough to the car in front, if you've got the straight line speed advantage, you can probably make a move into the final corner. However, in this occasion, the Dart is just too good through the corners. It can manage to make up a big enough gap before it gets to the straight, so the Nissan doesn't really have a chance. Of course, actually overtaking into that final corner with a car that doesn't handle very well is a little bit tricky as well, so you've always got to be careful of that. I think this is coming on to the final lap with the battle for second. It went on the entire race between these two, with the Skyline trying to find a way past the Evo 10. Again, if the Skyline had got past, I wonder how fast it would have gone. You can see the Evo 6 up there has managed to make a fair bit of a gap. I think there's a little bit of frustration creeping in there with a little bit of a nudge. And again, the Skyline's still trying to find a way past. I think in the background the Dart fell off the road. Not sure about that one. Didn't notice that when I was filming for this, but okay. Still, the Skyline's trying to find a way past. The Evo again goes defensive into the final corner. It's a very long way to try and go around the outside of there. It's onto the straight now, and if the cars are evenly matched, it is very tricky to make a pass into that final corner. There is not a very big braking zone down there at all, and yeah, it's a tricky corner to get an overtaking manoeuvre done. As you can see, coming into the final corner, not much the Skyline can do, and can't really do much on the exit either if you have an equally matched car. And there we go, that is how they finished. At the front though, the Evo 6 had pretty much not had too much to worry about. It was a little bit busy on the first couple of laps, but having cleared the other Mitsubishi, he had managed to drive away from the entire field, and I'm pleased. I like Evo 6s, so I'm happy that one of them won. Just purely out of interest, out of curiosity, you might like to know the fastest lap for this race went to the Dodge Dart. So the track that is designed for the good handling tuner cars, the fastest lap was the Dart that was broken. I don't know how that works either. I think the Skyline probably would have had a faster lap if it wasn't damaged and stuck behind the Evo 10. But that's racing for you. Anyway, there we go. That is it for this video, guys. So thank you very much for watching. Now, next week's FailRace versus the community, or technically this, I always get confused as to what to call it. Anyway, the next FailRace versus the community, there we go, that'll work, is going to be raced in the R3 class Subaru Imprezas. I think it's like Cusco Imprezas or whatever the hell they're called. They're going to be run completely stock. There's going to be no tuning allowed, so everybody is going to be running equal cars. You are more than welcome to paint them, though. They are really good cars. Me and Daniel were doing a couple of practices with them. They are incredibly good fun to drive. I never knew how good they were. They are amazingly good fun. I'm a little bit scared of running race cars in this for an event because they are very fast. They have phenomenal brakes. They have an awful lot of grip, and that can often lead to crashes when you are pushing them to the limits. But I'm hoping everything will go well. I think it should be good fun. Maybe if everything goes well, if there's not too many incidences, we might do some more with the race cars. I don't really like racing the proper race cars too much, although these are a bit of an exception because they don't have a huge amount of power. They just have huge amounts of grip. Now, the tracks that we'll be running are Silverstone Grand Prix, I've forgotten now, Hockenheim and Infineon NASCAR. There we go. They are the 3 tracks that we will be running. Each race lasts for about 10 minutes. If you want to sign up, then you can do so on our forums. I'll put a link in the description. You go to the FailRace versus the community section, and then you can sign up in there. And that is about it. I apologise to people who couldn't get into this race because of connection issues. There is also potential for there not just physically not being enough room, as a lot of people are signing up to these now. It's very difficult fitting everybody in and getting everybody online at the same time. We're doing the best we can at the moment. The kind of current system we have is first come, first served to those who signed up. We might look at changing this to a better system if I can think of one that works. I mean, the big problem is that not everyone who signs up can actually get online at that time. They have to get called away, they're busy or whatever. So it becomes very complicated and kind of messy trying to organise it. We do the best we can, so I apologise to anybody who hasn't been able to make a race which they want to. However, that is it for today, so until next time, goodbye.